The takeaway for me was very, very simple. Christ is real. Life after death is real. And it's more beautiful than you can even imagine. You have nothing to fear. People should have no fear to leave this world. And they should rejoice when other people leave this world because they're going to experience what I experienced.
Due to the government's job system, a lot of families find it hard to make a living. To be young and unemployed is an everyday thing. That's why so many youths gone ragamuffin. I know we struggle but we never give in. Hey, hey, struggle but we never give in. No way, struggle but we never give in. Hey, hey, struggle but we never give in.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a legendary episode, I can already tell, because I have a legendary guest. He is Grammy-nominated reggae artist. We're talking 4 generations of musical artistry in the British Music Hall of Fame, world traveler, legendary musician, legendary Urantian, minister, teacher, counselor, mentor. I feel like I need a reggae beat while I'm saying this stuff. And legendary man of service.
Thank you, brother.
Ladies and gentlemen, clap your hands, move your body for the one and the only Pato Banton. Let's go. Thanks for doing this, man.
Thank you, Shayne.
Appreciate having you.
So blessed to be here today.
Yeah. Man, I was listening to some of your live stuff recently, I think from last year at a reggae festival in California, and the band is sounding tight.
Yeah.
Sounding real good.
Yeah. Oh, that was a recent one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2025.
Yeah.
And I feel like, because I'm very familiar with your music and thanks to YouTube, able to listen to the live stuff too.
Yes.
And I feel like your live stuff is like where the magic happens.
That's definite. That's definite. It doesn't matter what I do in the studio. Once there's a crowd in front of me, it changes everything.
Yeah.
Everything changes.
Yeah. Yeah. You can tell. And you have a amazing band, lovely keyboard player.
Yep. Antoinette.
Yeah. Yeah. And the bass. I'm a drummer.
Okay.
Bass and drums is like for me where it's at. And what is it about reggae music? It's just like, to me, it's the most magical of the music genres, you know?
I think it's because it originated as a tool for spirituality, It really, when the Rastafari movement was emerging from Jamaica, reggae just evolved at the same time. And it just became a beat and a groove that you could just really feel the spirit to and just, you know? Yeah. It's just that vibe. It's just a vibe.
Yeah. It's that offbeat too. It just makes you want to move and dance. Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Man, if it's a hot day, sun's shining, you're on a beach and you have some reggae music, life is good. Yeah. Yeah. So my introduction to reggae, which I'm sure this is the case for a lot of people, especially in North America, is Bob Marley.
Yes.
And so and you grew up in England, right?
Yes.
Birmingham?
I grew up in Birmingham, England, and our house was a community party house. I was born in London, and because of serious domestic violence, my family got split up. My mum had to run away from her husband. He tried to kill me and my 3 brothers when I was 6. And my brothers were all younger than me. So you can imagine and they were all the other 3 kids were his kids. And he came home and saw my mom leaving with another guy. He came in, locked the bedroom door, and set the place on fire, and then left. And we were in the basement. And those windows in London are huge windows. So I figured out, I never touched the window before. I never even thought of touching the window before. But when I saw the fire coming under the door, I managed to open this big, huge window at the age of 6. And then, thank God, we were in a basement, so I just dropped my brothers out the window, and then I jumped out and then told the families upstairs that downstairs in the basement was on fire. And then we got split up for couple years, and then I was reunited with my mom. And then when we were reunited, her boyfriend was from Jamaica, and he was a DJ from Jamaica, and he had a sound system, and they would renovate our rented house with 2 other families. They would renovate one of the rooms and the kitchen into a nightclub and a bar.
Yes.
And so at the age of 8, I was a security guard.
All right.
And so I heard the evolution of music from Jamaica from the age of 8 going up to 13, 14, 15 when it started to become reggae. And so I was right there. He would go and buy his music every weekend from the local record store. And I would be one of the first people to hear the imports from Jamaica. And so that's the lifestyle I grew up in, was illegal late night parties, because we were not allowed to have parties. The Black community was not allowed to have parties in the UK. So we were facing a lot of racism. From the police, from the people in the community that didn't want us to exist. So it was a very tough life. And I was in the mix at that age, in the mix of everything else. I was a security guard of illegal parties for, 8 years of my early childhood life. Not doing much school, just, working for my family and helping them do what they were doing.
Right, right. And so my understanding is that there was a real reggae scene happening in England, right?
Yes.
Like a lot of Jamaicans emigrated to England,
a lot
right?
of Jamaicans. My mother's parents emigrated to England. So did my stepdad. My mom was a young child when she was moved to the UK too. So there was a pretty big Jamaican community. They were promised by the British government that they would all have jobs, all have their own homes, that there was gold on the streets. So everybody jumped on the boat. And then when we got over there, we realized that actually the Indian community had got there before us. So they took all the homes that were available, and then they rented to us.
Okay.
So we were like 3 families renting into a 4-bedroom home. So yeah, and then once like 15 years, or once the mortgages was paid off, they would kick us out and then take their properties back after we paid for it. So our community ended up with not that much collateral or anything to show for what we had invested into the community. But, I'm not complaining. I had a rich culture, because even though I was born in London, grew up in Birmingham, I was in a Jamaican community. I was surrounded with Jamaicans who were speaking Jamaican, eating Jamaican food, playing Jamaican music. So yeah, I had a full-on experience. And when reggae music evolved and all the young youth started questioning where they came from and wanted to know about Jamaica and Africa, we all grew our dreadlocks like Bob Marley, and we felt as though we had a culture to identify with. And, we had been getting told so many times, go back to where you come from. It was like, all right, where did I come from? I didn't come from London. I checked out Jamaica. I didn't actually come from Jamaica either. I went to Africa, found out, all right, my material roots are in Africa, where did I come from spiritually?
Mm,
And that's where
mm,
my spiritual search started.
right. And so, when your family was having these parties, um, that your like the real introduction to reggae music?
Yes. That
Yeah.
was my introduction to music, to Jamaican nightlife, you know?
Mm, right.
And I saw everything that a child is not supposed to see,
Right.
I saw. Everything you're not supposed to hear, I heard. And I never heard anyone throughout my childhood, except for when I was in London and my grandmother took me to church once. I never heard anyone else throughout my teen years talk about God or talk about, spirituality or peace and love. It wasn't until reggae music came
Mm,
that I started to hear about the Most High and Jah,
yeah.
you
Sure.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the Bible, read your scriptures and all that kind of stuff. So that's what got me motivated to want to learn more, you know?
Really? Yeah. And so, um, this has become your career now.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious how, like, what was the first step for you in making that happen?
Well, you know, I've never really considered it to be a career. It's always kind of been more like a hobby.
Mm, mm, yeah.
I still call it my hobby. Um, when I was about 15, 16, um, I started going on the mic. Well, probably more like 14, I started taking a microphone sometimes on the sound system and imitating the Jamaican artists like U-Roy and I-Roy, Yellow Man, all the early artists. And then everyone said, you should do more of this. You're really good. You're really good at it. So I said, okay, I want to write my own lyrics then and do it my way. And so there was a big rise of music in the UK. We had Steel Pulse, you know, we
Mhm,
had UB40, we had the
mhm,
English Beat, we had Aswad, Maccabee, Tipper Irie, all these Papa Levi, all these great reggae artists started to emerge from the UK. And I went to a English Beat concert, and at the concert they were having a talent contest. So, and it was just up the road from my house at the time. So I joined the talent contest. And when I just about got in because I arrived late and I just got to the last of the list. And when I got in, I won the contest. And one of the prizes was to go in the studio with the lead singers in the band and record a song. So Rankin Roger, you know, was one of the lead singers in the band. He took me to his studio. We worked on about 2 or 3 songs. He presented them to the band, and they took one of the songs, and put it on their, English Beat Service album, and it went gold in America.
yeah,
It was a big hit around the world, and, at the same time, UB40 was working on a album, and they wanted local talent to be on it. And so I went to the studio and they gave me 2 songs on the album to sing, and that album went gold. And then Mad Professor, the biggest reggae producer in the UK, he he contacted me. No, I contacted him and told him I had an idea for an album called Mad Professor Captures Pato Banton,
yeah, yeah.
and that became legend. It
Right.
was a legendary project that me and him did together. And so all of a sudden, I've got through 3, 4 major projects being released all over the world, and apart from that, I had also, um, I was also the number 1 MC in my city 7 years in a row. I had challenges every single year, and I was undefeated until I started releasing music professionally, and then I just passed it over to the to the other guys. I never went back into contests after that. So yeah, my career, and I guess it was just, if there was 3 show concerts in my city, in a night, on a weekend or on a Friday night, for instance, you would hear my voice at those 3 concerts. I would
Mhm.
just turn up, go and talk to the DJ and do some lyrics over some music. And the same thing on Saturday. I'd be at shows, private parties. I was just everywhere. And then I started going down to London because they call me country boy if you're outside of London. So I would
Okay.
go to London with the heavy hitters, and they were like, wow, this guy's got some talent. So the next thing I know, I'm signed to 3 labels in London, and yeah, I was just all over the place.
So did it just feel like a whirlwind? Like just
It was a big whirlwind. It was a big whirlwind. And it was like everything I touched was a hit. It was
yeah.
strange. It was like
So like how do you deal with that? You know?
um well, for me, it wasn't even a question of how you deal with it. It was like I'm just trying to keep up, you
Yeah,
know?
you're in it.
I'm just in it. You're just in the mix and you're just doing it. And your music's in the charts. You're getting called on TV. You're getting called to go to another country. I surrounded myself with a good band. I got a local friend to be my manager. I had all these big managers trying to sign me. And my friend, who was my driver one night, I said to him, "What do I do? We just did this massive show. I was an underdog at the show, and I ended up stealing the show." You know, the top DJ in the UK, David Radigan, called me back, to come and do an encore, and the place went crazy. And I had to do my song a cappella. It took me 15 minutes to finish my song a cappella because every other line, the place was going crazy. And so all these managers started to rush me to sign me. And I said to my friend who was driving me, "What do I do, man? I've got all these guys who want to sign me." And he looked at me and says, "I'll manage you." And I'm like, are you serious? You're the driver, man. What experience have you had? He's like, you know, I think he says, "I believe in you and I think I could help you." And for me, that was enough. And so he became my manager, took me all around the world, made my career amazing. We had an amazing journey together. And yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah. And you're known for incorporating your spirituality into the
Mhm.
music and the lyrics especially. Was that important to you early on, or was there a point where that became in your awareness, like this is part of who I am and what I need to share?
Once once I heard reggae music, I was inspired. And my biggest struggle was with the British music scene. When I wanted to do serious spiritual lyrics, because I was inspired by reggae music, by spirituality. And when I wanted to do that in the UK, the record labels only wanted humorous lyrics. They wanted me to tell stories. They wanted fun lyrics. Anything too heavy, anything talking about politics or spirituality was an issue for them. So it was an issue for me, but I gave them what they wanted, and it was the Mad Professor album. When I said to Mad Professor, "I've got a project I want to do," that was when I had my first chance to really vent how I was feeling about life, God, the world. And then after that, I did another album called Never Give In.
Yeah.
And no one in the UK would sign the album. They said it was too serious. So
Really?
I went to America and I found this guy who owned a record shop, and he had a very small label called Primitive Man. And he was just signing a deal with Sting's manager, Miles Copeland, Stuart Copeland's brother. And I said to him, "I'm trying to get this album out, but I can't get it signed in the UK." He said, um, "I'll sign it." And him and my manager did a deal, and he said, "I don't have any money, so I can only give you $1,000 for the album." You know, I'm like, that was my flight.
Yeah.
Never mind the studio and the band, and but with me, it was never about money. It was always about just getting the music out, get it out. Even if I'm getting robbed by somebody, I didn't care. I just wanted to get the music out. So when he said $1,000, I didn't complain to him. In my mind, I was kind of like, wow, that's really low, but I'm going to do it. This is an opportunity. So when he took it, IRS Records signed it, and it went gold in America. And then when IRS signed their deal with EMI, the album went over to EMI as well. And it became like, they call it, it has a cult. The album has a cult following.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Never Give In fans, they just want to hear that album.
Well, it's probably still my favorite song. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an anthem for sure.
It is. Yeah, definitely.
And I've had so many people tell me how that song helped them get through some really tough times. Even, a guy that was in hospital in a coma, he said all he could hear in his mind was never give in, until he recovered and got out of hospital,
Yeah.
So,
you must hear that type of thing for a lot of your songs, where there's something specific that gravitates to somebody and reaches them. Yeah.
So definitely it was a part of my early desire, being inspired by a music. I wanted to use that music as my vessel to be inspirational to other people. So even though I've had different types of hits and some major commercial hits, it was always my roots music that was my driving, that I wanted to write. But none of those songs ever got a big hit, But they live the longest, they last the longest, and they have the most meaning to me and to the people that hear them.
Yeah. And, you've had some amazing experiences traveling around the world, playing with some amazing musicians. I mean, UB40 for one, right? Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, do you ever sit back and just like look at the career and you're like, oh my God?
Recently, I've started to reflect. I've slowed down a bit now, and I'm doing more outreach work across Africa. But in my reflection time now, I'm looking through my records, I'm looking through the photos, I'm looking through my journals, and I've just been so blessed, for someone that didn't have an education, that really didn't know what I was going to do with my life, to pick up a hobby and do something I love that has taken me around the world and allowed me to live a decent life and take care of my family. It's a blessing,
Absolutely.
And to do something you love and get paid for it. It's like, are you paying me?
Right. Yeah.
I feel like I should be paying you for putting me on stage in front of all these people, providing me with food and a hotel. Yeah. So, I'm not good at negotiating deals because I'm so grateful. But
right.
It's a blessing. It's a blessing to do something you love.
It's like not many people have that opportunity to live their passion, and do it as a career path. Yeah. That in itself is amazing.
Yeah. And I've taken some risks as well. Being a reggae artist and, singing about Christ Michael and Destination Paradise and Mother Spirit and Thought to Justice and, using my platform to promote the Urantia Book, using my stage to promote the Urantia Book. Some promoters and some venues have really pushed me away because of it, but it's like, I can't help myself.
Right. Yeah.
When I found the Urantia Book, I won the lottery. It was like, wow.
Yeah. So
this information should be available to everybody. I got to share it.
Yeah.
And even, some people in the UB movement have criticized me for being too energetic or for being too out there, but I can't help myself. I'm sorry. You know, it's
It's who
so
you are.
beautiful. It needs to be shared.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Your spiritual journey. So you've mentioned that it started with the music at a young
With the
age,
music,
but
yes.
how did that progress for you? And then also, how did you discover the Urantia Book?
It progressed for me for at the age of 16. I read the Bible. Um, it progressed with me when I became a part of the Rasta movement in my city. I started to, they call it reasoning sessions, where they sit down and they share a spliff, and everyone starts to talk about God and read the Bible together. So this isn't the Rastas. For Rastas, marijuana is not just something to get high on. It's actually a sacrament, and it's taken with so much respect for nature, for the plant, and it's not abused. You know, you take
Mm-hmm.
just enough to get into that zone, and then we would read the Bible, and then we would discuss what we read. And in a lot of the sessions I was in, they would read and then explain what they read, and I would be hearing something totally different than what they were telling me was
Mm.
there. So I started questioning my elders, which was not good. And then I kind of got excommunicated from a couple groups and said, you know something, I need to do my own search. So I started studying the Bible. It led me to go to some Christian churches. Um, I cut my dreads, you know, um, not so much because of my beliefs. It was more because of a illness I had. You know, I had psoriasis, which is a skin issue, and my dreads, when my dreads got heavy, my scalp couldn't maintain its integrity to carry my hair, so I had to get rid of the hair for my health. But it led me to start going to church to talk to people who understood the Bible. And the more I studied the Bible with these church people, I was like, hold on, it doesn't say that. And can you answer this question? And then they told me it's not for you to know. There's certain questions in the Bible that you're not supposed to ask. You're supposed to just live by faith. And I'm like, I've got faith. I believe in God. I believe I'm a child of God, but there's certain historical explanations here that I think should be explained. So I ended up in about 5 different churches, got kicked out of everyone. Um,
Rebel.
I was but it was very respectfully done. You know, there was no fighting. It was like you can't really be here anymore. You know, you're ruffling the feathers. You're asking too many questions, and I was like, okay. And so I went on a 15-year search for spirituality, and it took me 15 years. And I studied Islam, as many Christian faiths as possible, Bhagavad Gita, you know, just studying the world's religions, studied metaphysics, had all this library of books. And every time I found a new book, I would fall in love with it. Every time I studied a new religion, I would fall in love with it until I came across the male ego. In every single book and every single religion, I came across the male ego that said something that was derogatory to women or derogatory to a certain group, or it was something that I was like, this guy is elevating himself, or they're elevating men over women, or they're elevating a group over another group.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't stay with this, you know? So at the end of the 15 years, I was like, all right, let me let me summarize in my mind who was the greatest person during my studies, who was the greatest spiritual leader during my studies, and it was Jesus. So I decided to go back to the Bible after the 15 years. And then I was frustrated until I studied the book of Revelation. After studying the book of Revelation, I realized that Michael was Jesus, because Michael was the one that was over Gabriel, and Gabriel was the head angel of all the angels. And if Michael was over Gabriel, Michael told Gabriel to go and bind Lucifer. So if Michael could give Gabriel an order, who is Michael if he's not an angel? And the only person in my historical reference of studying that could be over Gabriel would be the Son of God, which would have to be Jesus, which would have to be Michael. So that was what revelation came to me. Then I read Hebrews 7, and it said, this Melchizedek, the king of Salem, meaning the king of peace, with no mother and no father, no beginning of days, no ending of life, having no genealogy, but being like a son of God and being a priest continually. I'm like, oh no. And I went to a church and I asked the priest, who is Melchizedek? He said, Melchizedek is Jesus. I said, no, thank you. So I went looking for Melchizedek, couldn't find any info on Melchizedek except for a secret Islam sect in New York that had something about Melchizedek, but it was still vague. And so after this 15 years and coming to a brick wall with Melchizedek, I wasn't even looking for Jesus, because I was like, I know there's nothing else right now for Jesus out there, but if Melchizedek is a priest continually, I took it literally that my spirit took it literally that if this guy remains a priest continually, he must have been around after those 2,000, after that 4,000 years ago, or how many years ago, meeting Abraham and all of that. I just had a feeling that he was still connected to the planet. So when I hit a brick wall, I just got up one night and went outside into the street. No cars. And I just stood in the middle of the street and looked up into the stars. And I said, God, I have been searching for a long time, and I am so frustrated. Can you please send some information? Can you send an angel, send a revelation, send something? I just want to know the truth. I just want to know the truth and make sense of all of this stuff that I've been reading. 3 days later, I flew to Los Angeles to work with a band called the Untouchables. And Timothy was the trombone player. Sat down with Timothy. He introduced me to the Urantia Book, and I ended up leaving with his copy that night because I was convinced it was what I was looking for and what I prayed for. I knew it immediately as soon as I opened the book and I saw there's confusion on your world. And then I looked at the authors and I saw Melchizedek. And then I saw one without name and number. I was like, okay. And then my whole body started vibrating and tingling, and I felt like I was elevating. I'm like, bro, I just prayed for this, and here it is. He's like, take it, man. I just took it and never looked back.
Yeah.
And then my biggest frustration was how long it was going to take me to read the thing. That was my biggest frustration. I wanted to know everything immediately, and I just had to say, all right, let me take my time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And did you start right at the beginning?
No. I started with the indexed. So I just would read the table of contents, find something that I was like, all right, what is that? You know, or something I was familiar with but didn't get the answer to, like Adam and Eve, you know, like Lucifer Rebellion, like Melchizedek, you know, like life after death, personality survival. just things that I really wanted to know, mansion worlds. And then I was like, all right, now let me take my deep dive into the Jesus papers. And then while I was doing the Jesus papers, there's mention of the adjusters and mention of this and mention that. So you have to go back and forth to different parts. I had a concordex. I was on tour.
Mm.
I was on my tour with my band, and I'm leaving home with my Urantia book, my Bible dictionary, my metaphysical Bible dictionary, my concordex, and my Oxford dictionary. And my band thought I was crazy. And I think for a while I was crazy because I was trying to learn all these new concepts. I was desperately trying to learn, and I did not have a good vocabulary because I didn't go to school much and I never went to college. So I'm learning words that I've never seen before. And then there were words that are not in the dictionary. So you have to go to the concordex at that time to find the word, see where it appears in the book, and then go to all those parts to get an idea of what that word means.
Right.
So it was a very, very uphill battle to comprehend a lot of the papers. But once I started to expand my intellect, and I spoke to my adjuster, and I said, and I heard Paula Thompson say this recently on your show, that she didn't understand everything, but she just kept reading. And I said to my adjuster, I'm just going to read. And the things that I don't understand, if you can just filter them down to me whenever you're ready, so I can access the meaning later. But at least my eyes have seen the words and I've registered them in my computer. So later on I can download what I need to download. So yeah, it changed my life and changed my music, changed my attitude, caused me to get married and build a family. I had children spread out across the place in England. It made me get married and bring all my children into one home. And it made me just desire to just live a better life. It changed my life for the better, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting, what you've talked about there is seeking this intellectual understanding. And that part can be difficult. Like you said, big words, new terms, trying to figure this out. But at the same time, there's this deep internal heart level thing that's happening. And that's where the knowing is. Is this like inner resonance that it motivates you to get the intellectual understanding. And what I find really cool is there's this constant unfolding. It's like, it seems to me, I've had it over 30 years. And you could read something 3 or 4 times and yeah, maybe it makes sense, but it's not really hitting you. And then all of a sudden you're just in some point of your life and you read that thing and all of a sudden it has new, it's like a flower's opened or something. It's really amazing.
Unfolding.
Yeah. So, is there anything specifically in the book that you find or you found personally revelatory? Because there's a lot of, it's full of revelatory concepts, but I'm just something personal for you.
Wow. It would be very difficult. I think no one's asked that question before, but I think on the most personal, deepest level was the revelation that I had a thought adjuster, that God had the ability to give a fragment of himself that could be with me and that I could become one with. That still blows my mind, that I have a non-personal fragment of God that desires to be me, that desires to have my personality. And in the process of acquiring my personality, he gives me the gift of eternity. He gives me the gift of an unfolding eternity of divinity, of character development, of mind expansion, of service. That, and when I try to explain it to people, I sometimes talk about lemonade. And I tell people that if you take one fragment, one grain of sugar out of a sugar bowl, does that diminish the grain because it's no longer a part of the whole bowl? And the grain is still 100% sugar. That one tiny grain of sugar is undiluted 100%. So God has given me a piece of his sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So I have now the ability with lemonade, if you make lemonade and you put sugar in it, the sugar just goes to the bottom of the lemonade. The lemon water doesn't change. It doesn't taste sweet because you haven't stirred it up.
Right.
So I like the Bob Marley, stir it up.
Stir it up.
And so when you stir up that sugar in your soul, when you as an individual make spiritual decisions and brave choices, you're stirring up God's spirit in your soul. And the thing with lemonade, once you have stirred that sugar, you can no longer see the difference between the sugar and the lemon and the lemonade because they have merged, they fused. It's just become one sweet drink. And it's the same thing with a human being. When they stir up God, you may not be able to see God, but there's something about them that's sweeter.
Mm-hmm.
They start to talk sweeter, walk sweeter, be sweeter, So I like that analogy of how God's spirit works within us when we're willing to work with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's the sugar analogy. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree, that idea of God within. And when you have that as an intellectual understanding, it changes everything. You look at life differently, and with purpose. Then you realize, I have this higher calling, and then it informs so many other things in our lives, like things you've read, say in the Bible. It all starts to make sense.
Yes.
To you, right?
Yeah. And then you realize that you're not alone.
Yeah.
You're never alone.
You're never alone. Yeah.
And when I was younger, these I told you I was the number one MC in my city for 7 years. Some of those MC battles, I could have died at. It wasn't just like a concert, you go and do your thing. I had to go into some very dangerous zones where people were threatening to kill me. And it wasn't just about your talent. They hated you for being better than them. And there was times when people came to my house begging me. My family would beg me not to go to certain places in my city. But I always felt as though God was with me. And, even in some of my craziest situations where I was the closest to death, I still went knowing full well that this may be my last trip. But I had in my mind that God would be with me. But at that time, God was far away. And I was connecting with God from a distance. But when I found out that God was in me, in my mind, that just gave me the reassurance of who I was. But one of my biggest struggles, I think, with God is that I never knew my own dad. And I never had a male role model that I could look up to as being representative of a God relationship or a spiritual or a righteous relationship. So I didn't understand why I was going through certain psychological issues at certain points in my life until I read the Urantia book, and it says, if you haven't had a father in your life, you can go through, psychological upheaval
Mm-hmm.
when you're developing your relationship with God. So I went through that, and thank God I came out on the other end. But yeah, it's a beautiful journey when you realize that God is so amazing that He would actually come and give a piece of Himself to live in you, so that He can experience your entire life with you and go through the ups and the downs with you. You can never say, I was alone or I suffered. You can't complain to God, because God is in you, suffering with you. Through all of it, God is with you. It's just amazing.
It is. Yeah, it's so uplifting because that's a real struggle for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Um, Wondering why the world is the way it
Is
is sometimes, with all the difficulty and the struggle and, the evil that we see. And they ask, how could God be real if these things
right.
exist, right? But
And it's hard for a lot of people to accept a God in a world like this, a God of love in a world of hate and darkness. It's
mhm,
difficult. But you can't have light without darkness. You can't have up without down, left without right. You can't you for one thing to exist, the opposing must also exist. And we know that, for good to exist, evil must also be a choice. It must exist. Not that we have to choose it. It doesn't have to become real in our experience, but it has to exist. And if it does exist in a world of imperfect beings, then a lot of people are going to make imperfect choices, which are going to affect the world as a whole.
yeah, that's right. Like, for us to actually have free will, there has to
For us
be
to have
that
free will
choice there and the potential
between,
for a poor decision, right?
yeah, yeah. So it doesn't mean that God is any less good and that we should be any less good, but it just means that we exist in a world where bad exists, and we have to navigate to the best of our abilities through this crazy time, especially with the Lucifer rebellion and all of the darkness that has been on this planet, causing us to be way behind schedule, you know?
Yeah, that's another revelatory concept from the book.
Mhm.
It is in, certain religious
Yes,
texts. Like, this is in our history, little glimpses of it.
yes.
But the Urantia book portrays that in such a detailed fashion and
Detail way.
really helps us understand the context of why the world is
To
the way
know
it is.
when I found out that Lucifer, Satan, and the devil were 3 different people, I was like, "Oh, oh no. Okay." That's just and then I was always asking questions about Adam and Eve and why, you know, how did, Cain kill his brother and then go to the land of Nod and find a wife? And when I found the explanation in the Urantia book, it was like, yes,
Hmm.
finally, some sense to
Yeah.
this nonsense. It's like when I found the Urantia book, I had about 30 questions. I had a list of questions that I generated mostly from the Bible. And every single question was answered more than adequately, giving me more questions, which were then answered adequately, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It does that for
Yeah.
sure.
So, I have to say that my spiritual cup has been full, full and overflowing, and the frustration that I once had in my life is replaced with surety and confidence, and I'm not really I like to share the book with inquisitive people who are searching for the truth. And if people have a truth already, then I encourage them to be the best in that
Hmm.
truth, grow in your truth. Grow in your truth so much that you outgrow your truth.
Mm.
And then I'll meet you on the mountaintop of spirituality.
Yeah. That's right.
I tell people, religion should be like a pair of shoes for a 1-year-old. You're supposed to outgrow them by the time you get to 2.
Yes, that's good.
You know?
So, can you talk a little bit about your ministry
Yeah.
and the work that you've done?
Well, the ministry for many years was something that was just done with no title, with no focus on it being a thing. It just was a natural part of being an artist that was motivated by truth, to share the truth. It felt as though there was a natural outgrowth of having this knowledge and this desire to be of service. The more I learned was the more I desired to be of service. Music was my avenue to be of service. And then I started having fans ask me to bless their children, or pray for their children, or pray for someone who was sick in their life, or to officiate their wedding, or to bury a loved one that just passed away. And I was like, hold on. All right, I can do all this other stuff, but I can't officiate a wedding without legal credentials. So I had to go and get an online ordination. Once I got the online ordination, I realized that I had an even bigger responsibility, because even though I was doing all of this service and growing spiritually and all of that, I was still a musician in the music industry, making mistakes, looking at girls, doing stupid stuff now and then. But I did take my responsibility seriously. Once I had to go for my online ordination, that was like, wow, now I have a title. Now I have to be seriously responsible about who I am and what I do, so that my ministry, my title doesn't get, shamed. I don't want to be a minister that gets shamed because I'm not living up to my ministry. I have to take responsibility now. So it kind of elevated my thinking to be more disciplined and to be more of a righteous person, so that I could really honor my ministry. Then when I met Antoinette, she inspired me to she was observing me for a year. She was touring with me for a year before we got together. And she found the Urantia Book during our touring together, and she got really into it as well. And she said, "I'm talking to your fans. They all are blown away by what you're saying on stage. They love the Urantia Book that's at the merch table, but they have to wait to speak to you for when you come back, which could be in a year." She says, "Why don't you create an online ministry on Facebook so that you have an arena where people can join you and they can ask you questions about life, about spirituality, about the Urantia Book, and they can just stay in touch with you and you can be supportive to them." And I was like, no. I don't want to get I don't want to get technology involved in my ministry. And then 3 months later, she convinced me to not only have an online ministry, but to have an online study group, because I was resistant to that as well. I only wanted to do face-to-face study groups, which was difficult when you're on the road most of the time. And then the band, about 4 members in the band, started studying the book together. So that was a blessing while we were touring, but that diminished after different band members left. So I decided to go along with the online ministry, the online studying. And right now we have over 8,000 people in the online ministry group, but there's many, many, many more involved with our ministry that are not on Facebook, but they're still definitely involved. I've recorded that maybe about 100,000 of my fans have my cell phone number now. So I do get phone calls from fans, and I have offered free counseling, free marriage counseling, free child counseling. So when there's issues in the families of my fans, sometimes they'll call me and I try to help them through it. Then I'm doing weddings all over America now, baptisms, child christenings,
Hmm.
prayer circles, and now and more recently, funerals, which is the toughest one. But it's nice when you go to a funeral and your perspective is positive. I go
Yeah.
to a funeral happy, and by the time I'm done with them, they're all happy too.
Mm.
Because I explained to them, hold on, this person just graduated. You don't go to a graduation with a sour face. I understand you're going to miss the person, but we're supposed to be happy because, we believe in life after life. So that person is no longer having to deal with the problems of this world. They have a brand new beginning to look forward to, and in my personal experience, of leaving this world, I didn't want to come back. It was so beautiful on the other side. There's no words to even compare it to this. There's no words in the English language to compare it to. But when I went to the other side, I didn't want to come back. And when I came back, I was sad. So I tried to let people know, celebrate the memories. And we have to go and join this person eventually. None of us are going to stick around on this planet forever. We
Mm.
have to prepare for our graduation. So let's be happy, celebrate, and celebrate all the good things about that person and all the great memories as we wait to meet them again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's amazing that you have that relationship with your fans. Like, there's not a wall up there. It's
No,
very
very
personal.
open and personal. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really amazing and shows a real sincerity and a desire to uplift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm wondering,
Yeah.
can you talk about this experience of what happened to?
Well, it wasn't a near-death experience, but I was actually at home, and it was really when I just was embarking on my spiritual journey, and when I was into the Rasta movement, and I actually had a joint. I've never told anyone this before. I actually had a joint, and I took one hit of this joint, and it wasn't even strong weed. It wasn't any high grade stuff. It was just like, just dirt weed from Jamaica that was, you know, in England. I took one hit off of it. And the next thing I know, I'm standing in the middle of the street, a busy street, and there's fireballs coming down, meteorite balls just hitting the planet. And I mean hundreds of them. And I'm like, wow, this is judgment. It's judgment day. And people are running, screaming. And I'm standing in the middle of this and I'm like, there is nowhere to run to. I wasn't laughing at the time, but I was like, there is nowhere to run to. There's nowhere to hide. Then all of a sudden, when I said that, I said, I'm just going to embrace my transition. Whatever happens is just going to happen. When I said that, I just felt my body lifting off the ground. My body lifted off the ground and I was in a seated position. And then I started to go upwards towards the sky in a seated position. Yeah? And then I started to look around me and all of these people started to appear. And they were all in a seated position. And I realized I'm on an invisible train or an invisible vehicle that's got like 4 people on my row on this side, 4 people on that row, with a aisle in the middle, and people far, the rows go far in front of me and far behind me. I'm on a massive, massive vehicle that's going up. Okay? No noise, no sound, and everybody starts to sing. Everybody, including myself, we all start to sing the most beautiful song I've ever heard in my life. And there was people from every part of the world singing the same song. It didn't matter what your language was. We were all singing the same song, going up. And then all of a sudden, I just saw Christ. I knew it was Christ. I saw him far down in the aisle, coming down the aisle from far. And it was just like the sun. His face was the sun. And it was the brightest light. It was even brighter than the sun. It was a white, bright light. And but it wasn't so bright that it blinded you.
Mm-hmm.
It was just bright, but you could enjoy it.
Mm.
And
like a spiritual light.
It was a spiritual light, and his hands had the same light. And he was just walking down the aisle slowly with his hands stretched out. And it's like he was just touching everyone with love without touching them. He was just pouring love from his hands, coming down the aisle slowly, passing everybody. And then he got to me and he looked at me and he said, "You just about made it." And I was like, yeah! And then we pulled into this garden. And everybody just started running off the train, running into the garden. And I was like, yes, I made it. And as soon as I said, yes, I've made it, I opened my eyes and I was back in the room. And the spliff was still alight. Now, what I just said to you, what I just explained to you, I explained it short. But this journey was a long journey. Just the experience of the bombs dropping, that went on for a while. Then going up went on for a while. And then observing Christ coming down the aisle went on for a while. And then watching everybody run into this Garden of Eden and feeling so ecstatic about what the future holds in this new environment. A spliff normally goes out in a few seconds if you don't keep puffing on it. The thing was still alight. So I realized, hold on, this all happened in a matter of seconds. Whatever it was a revelation to me.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever experienced in my life.
You know, you're not the first person I've heard a story like that from. You know, because a lot of people hear that and say, well, it's obviously something,
yes,
you know. But for people who've had these types of experiences that are, say, outside of the normal, actually, a word jumped out to me while you were talking there, and it was surrender. Right? Like these fireballs are coming, and then you basically surrendered to the, and
no
then
fear.
No fear. Exactly. And then you go have this experience. These things absolutely can happen for people and do happen for people. And they are spiritual experiences that kind of open you up to something. I'm curious, what immediately after, what was the takeaway for you? Were you just like in disbelief, or?
The takeaway for me was very, very simple. Christ is real. Life after death is real. And it's more beautiful than you can even imagine. You have nothing to fear. You've got people should have no fear to leave this world, and they should rejoice when other people leave this world, because they're going to experience what I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to wake up in a better place without paying the bills, without the dread of being sick, without all of this turmoil that's going on. They're going to be surrounded by celestial beings who can answer their questions. You know, there won't be any more religions. We'll just be one spiritual family worshiping God together on our way to paradise. You know, it's just so reassuring.
Yeah.
I was happy, you know. I was happy at the end of that experience. I was happy, and during my search, during the years of searching, I was not in any fear or remorse. I wasn't no religion could hold me based on fear, because I'd already seen something so joyous, you know, that I knew that we just have to do the right thing and live the right way, you know, to get there, you know? And at that point in my life as well, when I heard the word, "You just about made it," I had so many options, criminal options, growing up in a criminal environment. You know, one of the biggest ambitions that most of my friends had when I was a teenager was to be a pimp. That was the local ambition, you know? And so it didn't seem as though I never ever thought that I could become an international Grammy nominated artist. That never crossed my mind. I was just doing music for the love of doing music and having fun. You know, I always thought I would die young or end up in jail. Or die in jail, you know, and I have been to jail. You know, I did do some criminal activities when I was in my teens. You know, I used to break into shops and steal stuff and then sell it to the community. You know, but I survived that, you know, and I think just my desire to want to grow spiritually, I think that's what led to me getting this experience. You know, my desire was so intense to know who I was and where I came from spiritually, that Christ gave me a taste of it.
Yeah, that's something that's so important for people to understand is the sincere desire,
Mhm.
that act of reaching out, there is a response, you know.
Yes.
You know, you can refer to it as the
Yes.
universe or but it's really spirit and
Mhm.
God acts to that that small flicker of faith.
Yes. And one of the things about the Urantia book, it always talks about religious experience. And it's like, if you're on your spiritual journey, at some point you're supposed to have an experience, a profound experience. At some point, if you're investing into your spiritual nature, at some point and multiple times, you're supposed to have a profound experience and other experiences along your way. It's not just supposed to be a stagnant, you know, dormant thing. You know, the Urantia book tells us that, and Christ tells us over and over again that the ultimate true religion is your personal religious relationship with God, you know?
Yep. Yep.
So,
Personal.
yeah.
Personal.
So I've had a few different experiences, and I know God is real, you know? I
Yeah.
know that there is a spiritual world out there that is much more real than this shadow that we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, I can say the same thing, especially in the past few years. I've had a number of experiences. It's like this I've been almost energized, and my opening has invited these things to
Mhm,
happen. And now there's this desire to share. And
mhm.
it can be really hard thing to do because you can't do other people's work for them. You know, you can only attest to what you've experienced and be an example. Try to be a positive example to people.
I share another experience quickly with you.
Sure.
Which I don't normally talk about either. I was going through I would say a mild breakdown. Yeah, I was going through a mental breakdown. My family was very concerned about me, and I was just so enthused by the Urantia book at the time. It was just that's all I wanted to do was study, read, serve, but it was affecting my reality. So anyway, I'm walking down the street on the main high street where I live in Kingsheath, Birmingham, and I see a blind man, and he's walking towards me with a cane, and he's tapping the ground with his eyes closed, and he's walking with the cane. And I don't know why. I stand in front of him, and I say, "Hi," and he goes, "Hi," and I go, how many fingers?" And he goes, "I'm blind." I said, "How many fingers?" He says, "I'm blind." I said, "How many fingers?" I shouted at him. And he went, "3." When he said 3, I grabbed his cane, and we were standing outside of a church on the high street, and I threw his cane into the church grounds. That blind man climbed over the church wall, walked past the church building into the grounds, grabbed his cane, came back over the wall, closed his eyes, and started tapping the ground and walked past me. All right? A week later, all right? A week later, there's this guy walking with, those frames those metal frames that you walk with, you hold them when you can't walk. I told him to give me the frame. This was right close to my house. I said, "Give me that frame, you can walk." He says, "I can't walk." I said, "You can walk." He says, "I cannot walk." He says, "Honestly, I can't walk." I said, "Give me the frame." He said, "No." I grabbed the frame and threw it across the street. He ran across the street, grabbed his frame, and started walking the way he was walking when he first walked up to me, as though he couldn't take one step without the frame. And I'm saying to God, why is this happening? Because I'm not healing them, and it seems as though they don't need healing. It's as though they have chosen their disability.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward 3 years later. No, fast forward 7 years later. I'm with Antoinette. I'm going through another one of these mental experiences, but this time it's very mild. And I haven't had one for a long time. But I'm having a mild one. That was the last one I ever had. Where me, her, and her daughter go to a shopping center, and there's this lady in a wheelchair. And I walk up to the lady and I say, "Get up and walk." I'm not trying to heal her. That's not my thing, okay? But something inside me has told me that this woman can get up and walk.
Mm-hmm.
She says, "I can't. I can't walk. That's why I'm in the wheelchair." Antoinette and her daughter tell me, "Leave the lady alone." The lady starts crying. She says, I can't walk. I'm stuck in this wheelchair. Please." I said to her, "I'll give you $100 if you give me your wheelchair. If you get up and give me your wheelchair, I'll give you $100. The woman gets up out of her wheelchair, and I walk off with her wheelchair. and give her $100. Antoinette and her daughter are looking at me like, what just happened? The woman explains to Antoinette and her daughter that she is with a guy who is abusing her. They live in a little mobile truck, and he forces her to sit in that wheelchair all day and beg for money. And she has to pee herself and do whatever she's doing right there in that wheelchair because she cannot afford to let anybody see that she can walk. That was the first time she stood up in a public place for, I don't know, a year. She asked me if she could have the wheelchair back. I gave her back her wheelchair and gave her my number. And she later contacted us and told us she got away from the guy and she's living a normal life. But that experience of me forcing her to stand up changed her life.
Mm-hmm. And all because you listened to that intuition.
Yeah.
Or that.
She realized she cannot continue doing what she was doing. And she had alcohol on her too. And she said she was drowning her sorrows. But it wasn't until the third experience, because the first two times it happened, I was confused, and I'm saying, am I tripping? But when I had Antoinette and her daughter as a witness, and they thought I was tripping until she actually got up, it was like, I'm not being revealed. I'm not being asked to heal. I'm being asked to reveal that this condition is not real. I don't understand why, but that's what I got from it.
Yeah. It's like you're being this conduit of positive influence.
Yeah. I don't know. I still, all I know is that there are people in this world who have got faith in their sickness, or they've got ailments that they don't need to have.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way I can put it.
Yeah. Well, the Urantia Book talks about that, right? How there's certain types of people and all they need is encouragement.
Yes. And even Jesus, there was someone that he healed. They thought they were possessed.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus cast out the demon. But after he did it and they were cleansed, he told his followers there was no demon. That person only thought they had a demon. And that's happened to me as well. I had someone come to me saying that his sister has a demon in her. So I said, put me in touch with your sister. Put me in touch with his sister. And she said to me, do you have the power to cast out demons? I don't believe in demon possession, but I told her yes. And so I cast the demon out and she was healed. And that's just because she had faith that somebody had the power to do that.
That's right.
And I only had the confidence to do that because of what I learned in the Urantia Book.
Yeah. Somebody had to help give her the faith.
To give her the faith. So it's, the journey is interesting.
Yeah.
The journey is very, very interesting.
Well, I want to ask you about something else that I find interesting because I know you've had a UFO experience. Yes. I'm just wondering if you'd share about that.
All right. It was in Mammoth Lakes. And it was after a concert. And me and the band and a few fans, and my brother was there traveling with us. We went to a hot springs place because it was snowing. And then there's this hot water with the steam coming off it, you know how it is. Mm-hmm. So we all went into this hot springs, and there was an astronomer standing outside of the hot springs with is it a telescope? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he was looking at this planet. And he said, do you want to come and have a look at this planet? And I'm like, yeah. And it was like the planet was like right up close in the lens. I was like, oh my God, that is beautiful. So after I had that first experience in my life, I went into the hot tub. And as I'm sitting in the hot tub talking to everybody, my brother is a skeptic, big time of everything. All of a sudden, hovering over us is this huge vehicle, silent. The lights come on. It's got 3 lights under it. And it's just huge. And it's not moving. And it's not even making a buzz. It's not going dooga or zzz, nothing. It's silent. Then it goes like this. About 100 feet. Another 100 feet. And then it goes. And the third time, it took off so fast that there was a cloud where it took off from. It I was told later that it actually vaporized the space it was in because it took off so fast. And as far as everybody in eyes could see, we saw that thing going into space for as far as our human eyes could see until we couldn't see anymore.
Mm.
And then we just all sat down there in silence for about 15 minutes. Nobody said a word. And there was no fear, there was no panic, but we just sat down there just thinking about it. And then I think I said, what was that?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, you know, those Superman things. Is it a plane? Is it this? Is it that? No, it's Superman. Like, it wasn't a helicopter, you know, it wasn't a drone, it wasn't an airplane. There was nothing that exists on this planet that we could identify with. This thing to move the way it moved, we realized it was some different technology. And my brother, for the first time in his life, said, I now believe in alien technology.
And how close did it get to you?
I would say it was about 50 feet.
So
50
that's
feet overhead,
very close.
A bit to the right of us, but it was close. And then
And
when it moved, it was like it was demonstrating to us.
Right. It was putting on a show.
It was putting on a show because it did not need us to see it. If it didn't want us to see it, we wouldn't have seen it. But and I don't even know how long it was there, but when the lights came on, we realized, hold on, there's a thing here. And then when it did what it did, it was like, okay. And then it just took off. It was like, wow.
And like, were you, prior to that experience, did you have any like interest in questions? No, just out of the blue?
I was never interested in UFO stuff. I knew there was something going on. You know, when I saw all of this UFO stuff, I was like, yeah, okay, I can believe that. I can believe we got some visitors. We're not alone in the universe. You know, but and if they wanted to be hostile, they could have taken us out a long time ago. So they're definitely observing, or they've got something going on. But it's not something that I wanted to. I was more on my spiritual search than a UFO search. But once I saw that, I was like, all right, now I've experienced it and seen it for myself. You know, now it's not just a theory in my mind. Now I know it's real.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because I've had some experiences as well, and this is a topic I'm interested in, and I hear from a lot of people who've had these types of experiences, and there is a spiritual aspect, I guess, to all of this. It's like this is another method of opening people up. So maybe, just the fact that someone in that group had an experience where it opens them up, and that's why it can happen, because it's, everyone is open in some way, or it's not, there's, like you said, there was no fear. right? But it's really interesting that these activities are really ramping up, and we're in this, people are saying the age of disclosure,
Yes.
right? And now it's happening at this time where we have this war happening and talk of nuclear weapons being used, and that seems to be the connecting point is
Mhm.
there's a couple things that this thing
Yes.
can interact with your consciousness, and it's very concerned about nuclear weapons.
Yes. Yes.
So anyways, yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. So, we definitely, and the Urantia book tells us that we have celestial observers. We've got the midwayers, we've got our, our celestial guides. So we're surrounded, there's a lot of activity going on that we can't see, and I'm sure everybody would love to be alive the day that they actually do reveal themselves and say, "Hey guys, all right, time for us to coexist on the planet now. You can see us now. We'll let you know what we've been doing all these years."
Yeah.
And my, I dream for the next visitation. That's my dream, that Adam and Eve would return with a planetary prince and Melchizedek's, and everybody just come back down, establish a center for us, and then we just start, healing this planet, putting
Hmm.
things in the right perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's what we need to be doing, is moving in a more spiritual, loving, spiritually aligned direction,
Yes.
aligning with spiritual values.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, I'm just wondering if you could share your thoughts on Jesus and the personal relationship that's grown along your journey and with the Urantia book.
Wow. Firstly, before I do that, I just want to um, put on the record books that I have also been very blessed with having a partnership with Antoinette,
Mm.
Root's
Hmm.
daughter, who embraced the Urantia book, who is an amazing musician as well, and supports everything that I do in my ministry and in my music and in my other work that I do. And I just want to say thank you, Antoinette, for everything that you have done to help us shine this light and change so many lives in so many different ways. And talking about Jesus, you know, I can only say that I am so grateful for this Fifi Paco revelation to allow us to see Jesus in such a bigger light than any other avenue of research or books or literature has allowed us to see Jesus. W- Through the Urantia book, we see that Jesus is not just a son of God, but also the sovereign ruler and creator of this universe. We we I did an album called The Words of Christ. It's a 7 CD box set um, that focuses on what Jesus said. And it took me 7 years to record it, and 7 years of studying his words in the Urantia book. And I fell in love with Jesus and the way he lived his life, the way he loved, the way he served, the dedication he had, he has to our Heavenly Father. It's so inspiring. And I think when I was younger, I didn't really appreciate how amazing his life truly was. And the older I get, and I realize that I still am so far from living that life the way he lived it. Because when I was younger, I was thinking to myself, well, he was 36, I've got some time left. I can catch up to be what. Now I'm approaching 65. I'm like, wow, I've still got a long way to go. I feel like I've only taken a couple steps from where I was, you know, but I appreciate his life. what's interesting for me and why I love Jesus so much is that there was a human side of Jesus. And sometimes we overlook that. We only see the divine, sovereign, Christ, Michael, ruler. But there was a human side of him that actually had doubts and sometimes had fears and, even cried. And it's like he lived a human life, and his divinity was revealed to him later in his life. And even when his divinity was revealed to him, he still chose to live the human life. He still chose to be limited so that he could experience our limitations. So the Spirit of truth, Jesus' Spirit, is with us. So we can be taught by him. We can feel his love through his Spirit right now. So I do have a relationship with Jesus. I have a beautiful relationship. And there's been times even in my life where I sometimes feel as though he's in me. It's like I feel as though, is this me, or is this an expression of Christ coming through me? And at those times is when I kind of go into my mind and say, let me step out the way. Or sometimes I experience my adjuster and I'm like, let me get out the way. Whoever it is, whatever going on, let me get out the way, because I can serve better if I submit and allow this service to come through me. So, my personal relationship with God and with Christ is not something that I can explain in words. It's not something that you can prove, but it's definitely an experience that you can have, that you can feel, and that you could share. And many times when I'm doing service, especially the most difficult service, I remember when Jesus said, whatever you do for the least of my brethren, you have done this service to me. And when I serve certain people and I realize not only is Jesus in them, the Spirit of God is in them. And if I'm doing something good for them, I'm doing something good for God. I'm serving my Father, And then if I step out the way, I allow the Father to provide a service to his child. Because there's some difficult situations where when you can't really build your spiritual character without going out there and getting in the dirt of service. Because I can sit in my house, and feel like, yeah, I'm reading my book, I'm praying, I'm living a good life, I'm close to God, And then I get outside and I'm in an argument with somebody. And then everything I've been practicing is out the door, So when you go out and serve, that's when your patience gets tested. That's when you find out what is your true character. When somebody puts a spotlight on what makes you angry or what your weakness is, So that's why I love being of service so much, because there is a challenge there. And it's not always challenging, and some people appreciate you, some people don't appreciate you. But if you do it with the mind that I'm in partnership in my service, I've got the Mother Spirit here, I've got Christ Michael here, I've got my Heavenly Father here, I've got some celestial beings hanging out too. When you do in that light, then it becomes a joy. It becomes fun, and it becomes a privilege, and you the beautiful thing about making people happy is that you immediately feel happy.
Mm-hmm.
When you can do something to make someone feel good, you feel good. Whether you're giving yourself a pat on the shoulder or not, you just feel good. It's like, it's just a natural reaction that the more you give is the more you receive on an emotional level. It doesn't always work with money.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on an emotional level and on a spiritual level, I can attest that the more you step out of your comfort zone and do things for people, you get rich with joy and happiness.
Absolutely.
And so I have to say thank you to Jesus for that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's difficult for some of us, I think, because we're living in a world where the majority of people identify Jesus with Christianity, and sometimes when you openly talk about Jesus, people just think you're a Christian and you're just in one of the groups,
Mm-hmm.
but what I've learned, one of the greatest things I've learned by studying the life and teachings of Jesus is that he didn't come for one group. He came for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the good news, which has been twisted in scripture to say that those who are saved in the name of Jesus or the blood of Jesus are the only ones that are saved, when Jesus' message was that everyone is saved if they have faith that they are a child of God. And this is the message for me. This is the number one priority in my life right now, is to share that good news and to encourage my brothers and sisters who I study with and learn with to remember that spreading the gospel, Jesus' message of good news, is primary number one, and is so much easier for people to embrace than a 2,000-page book, and everyone on the planet, we're told to spread the good news even to little children. Even little children can understand that they are a child of God,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So
Mm-hmm.
if we share that, then the people who are really interested to know, where did you get this good news from? Or what inspires you to be like the way you are? Or where did you get your knowledge from? Then we have the fifth epoch of revelation that we can share. So that's my order of sharing. I start with the good news, then I go to the Urantia book, unless I meet someone who is just so intellectually
Yeah.
ready,
Right.
and just
Yeah.
bursting at the seams with information and discussions, then it's like, all right, I have something I can share.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's great. I think that's a good spot to leave it. Do you have is there anything else that you wanna say? You wanna let people know about what you're doing, what you have upcoming, or where they can find you?
Yeah, well, people can find me on my website, officialpatobanton.com. They can find me for spiritual ministry at Pato Banton Spiritual Family on Facebook. If they want to know about the work I'm doing in Africa, um, we have a website that we just created called Uplifting Ubuntu Project. And we have another website that features the movie and the organizations called the Spirit of Ubuntu.us. I have another website that focuses on our future ministry project called Identia. We have 30 acres of land that we're hoping to build a spiritual retreat center on. And that website is identia.us. Apart from that, I'm still doing shows, still touring. I'm doing majority of work right now across Africa. We're building schools. We just built about 12 homes for widows and for people who are really struggling. We built an orphanage. We're doing outreach work. And we've got the IC 26 coming up, which we will be performing at.
Oh, amazing.
Antoinette's doing a presentation and a performance. I'm doing a live performance with my band. So that should be fun. And yeah, so we are busy, you know, and I've only mentioned a few things of what we're doing. I'm not going to go into the whole gamut, but yeah, we're doing a few things. My last message, being as this is really a Urantia Book interview for the Urantia community primarily, I would just like to send my love to everyone in the community and just say I'm loving the unity that I'm seeing. We are moving closer and closer to becoming more unified. Our major organizations, the foundation, the fellowship, you know, everybody seems to be coming closer and doing projects together and disseminating books around the world together. And this just makes me happy. There was a time when it wasn't so friendly, and I'm seeing friendly relations everywhere. And I just want to encourage everyone, let's keep it up. Let's be supportive of each other. And, you know, Gary Tong, I love you. You are amazing. And
Yeah,
Paula
buddy.
Thompson, I just watched your interview, which was amazing.
Thanks.
So, and Shayne, thank you so much. And who introduced us again?
Josh Abernathy.
Josh Abernathy.
My buddy.
Sorry, Josh. It slipped me for a minute. I want to say thank you, Josh, for creating this link. I love you so much, my brother. Josh is so amazing.
Oh, he's so amazing. Yeah,
so
we got another podcast project that we're working on too, Imperfections of Days. Man, so much happening right now. And yeah, like you said, it's so uplifting to see these things going on and this unity and spiritual community. It's really great.
Yeah.
And I tell you, if there's one thing I got to do, it's on my bucket list. It's to see Pato Banton live.
All right.
Let's go. I got to make that happen. I got to get out to California in that nice weather.
I'm telling you, man. Or I got to come to Canada.
Yeah, we got to get you up here. Let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I deeply appreciate you, not only your music, but your service. And thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, my brother. One love.
Due to the government's job system, a lot of families find it hard to make a living. To be young and unemployed is an everyday thing. That's why so many youths gone around.